Have you ever stared at a blank page for an academic paper and just felt completely lost? Like you're supposed to be playing a game, but nobody ever bothered to tell you the rules? Yeah, it's a super common feeling. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this whole intimidating world of academic writing. We're going to figure out the rules of the game together.
And hey, if you've ever felt that confusion, you're in really good company. This quote from researcher Teresa Lillis says it all. Academic writing is, quote, poorly understood by teachers and students alike. So this isn't just you, it's a system-wide thing. The advice we get is often kind of vague or even contradictory. So, how do we break through that?
It really does feel like hitting a wall, doesn't it? You get feedback that makes no sense, you look at examples that all seem totally different, and you just have this feeling that everyone else got a secret rulebook that you missed. You know exactly what you want to say, but you're getting all twisted up trying to figure out how you're supposed to say it.
So a lot of us think the solution is to just sound more, well, academic. Bust out the thesaurus, find the biggest words possible, and make your sentences super long and complicated. But is that really the secret? Is that the key to unlocking this whole thing?
Nope, not at all. In fact, that's one of the biggest myths out there. Great academic writing isn't about being complicated just for the sake of it. It's all about strategy. It's a craft that you can actually learn, not some secret code you have to crack. So the real question is, what's the strategy?
Well, that strategy really boils down to these 6 pillars. Thinking about your audience, your purpose, organization, style, flow, and presentation. Now, they're all super important, but to get the most bang for our buck today, we're going to zero in on 3 that give you massive leverage: style, flow, and organization. If you can get a handle on just these 3, you are well on your way. And when you start getting these strategic pillars right, the result is something called positioning. And this is the real end game. It's not just about getting an A. It's about showing your reader, your professor, a journal reviewer, whoever, that you get it. That you understand the big conversation happening in your field, and you actually have something worthwhile to add. Think of it as your ticket to join the club. Okay, so how do you get that positioning? Let's start with style, because this is where so many of those unspoken rules are hiding in plain sight. And this isn't about sounding stuffy or fake. It's about making deliberate language choices that signal to your reader, hey, I belong here.
Here is a perfect example of what I mean. It's a subtle, little vocabulary shift that has a huge impact. In our everyday speech, we use phrasal verbs all the time. We look into things, we figure out problems, but in more formal academic writing, you'll see a preference for single, often Latin-based verbs. So look into becomes investigate, come up with becomes propose. Making that one little switch immediately makes your writing sound more aligned with academic norms.
All right, what about that classic rule we all got taught? Never, ever use I in your writing. Well, guess what? It's pretty much a myth. The data just doesn't back it up. The use of I changes wildly depending on the field you're in. I mean, look at this. In philosophy, it's used almost 54 times for every 10,000 words. It's common. But then you jump over to computer science, and it's barely there, maybe 5 or 6 times. So the real rule isn't never use I. The real rule is know your audience and understand the conventions of your field. Okay, so beyond just word choice, another secret to sounding credible is flow. How do you make your sentences and ideas connect smoothly so your reader isn't getting lost? There's a brilliant little principle for this, and it's all about moving from old information to new information. So here's how it works. Your sentence, let's call it sentence 1, typically introduces a brand new idea or piece of information somewhere near the end. That's kind of the punchline of the sentence. Then, and this is the magic trick, your very next sentence, sentence 2, picks up that same idea, which is now familiar or old information, and puts it right at the beginning. This creates this incredibly strong, logical chain that pulls your reader through your text. It's so simple, but it's a total game changer for making your writing cohesive. All right, so we've got flow working at the sentence level. But how do we scale that up to build an entire argument? Especially in something like an introduction, which has to do so much work. Well, there's a master key for this too, a structure that'll make your intros clear, logical, and really persuasive. The classic, and for good reason, highly effective structure is what's called the general to specific funnel. I want you to literally picture a funnel. Your job in the introduction is to guide your reader from that big wide opening all the way down to the tiny specific point at the end. You start at the top, the wide mouth of the funnel. This is where you make a broad, general statement about your topic. You're just getting your readers situated, showing them why this topic is interesting or important in the first place.
Then, as you move down the funnel, you start to narrow the focus. This is usually where you'll talk about what other people have already said, the previous research. Or you'll highlight a specific problem or question that exists within that bigger topic.
And finally, you arrive at the very bottom, the narrowest point of the funnel. This is your thesis statement, your specific research question. This is where you tell the reader exactly what this paper is going to do. And because you've led them down this path, it feels totally logical and earned.
Now, this funnel structure actually has a formal name. It's called the CARS model, which stands for Create a Research Space. It's an amazing 3-step formula. Step 1, establish a territory. You show the topic is important. Step 2, establish a niche. This is where you point out a gap, a problem, or a question in that territory. And step 3, occupy the niche. You announce how your work is going to fill that gap or answer that question.
And you should really pay attention to the language of that second move, establishing a niche, because it's so important. It often uses these very specific signal phrases that are designed to carve out a space for you. You'll see things like, however, these studies have not considered, or previous research has failed to address. When you use phrases like that, you are literally creating the justification for your own work.
So we've covered a lot. Strategies for style, for flow, for building an argument. But what happens when you put it all together? The goal here isn't to become some kind of writing robot that just follows formulas. The goal is to learn these rules so well that you can start to develop your own confident, credible academic voice.
And it all comes back to that word positioning. So here are some final, really practical, do this, not that tactics. You want to be cautious and precise about your claims, not make big, sweeping generalizations. You want to use your sources and references to back you up, not just write from personal opinion. And you want to show that you're aware of the big debates and key issues in your field. This is how you show you're a serious, thoughtful member of that academic community.
If you take just one thing away today, I hope it's this. Academic writing is not a mystery. It's not some test that was designed to make you fail. It's a conversation. It's a huge, ongoing discussion that's been happening for decades, even centuries. And all these rules and strategies we've been talking about, they're just the tools you need to join that conversation.
So that fear of the blank page, that feeling of not knowing the rules of the game, hopefully that's starting to fade. Because now you have a playbook. You have strategies for your style, your flow, your argument. You've got the master key. The only question left is, how are you going to use it to position yourself and make your voice heard in the conversation?